you so much for joining us today. Just for everyone who may be not as familiar with Fairygodboss, we are the largest career community for women. Our mission is to improve the workplace for women by not only increasing transparency, but we also do provide a ton of free resources, including things like our anonymous company reviews, job listings, career advice articles, and virtual recruiting events. So before we get started today, I wanted to let everyone know that we will be taking questions at the end of this webinar. So at the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A feature. Feel free to ask your questions either anonymously or using your name, whichever you prefer there. We'll also be recording our session today. So if you do need to take breaks, grab a quick lunch, we will be sending that out as a follow-up, so you can feel free to go back and rewatch anything that you may have missed. All right, and today we are super excited to welcome Moody's, who's our sponsor for today's webinar. Moody's is a company with the belief that a diverse workforce representing an array of backgrounds and experiences contributes to the quality of their opinions, products, and their services. Moody's support independent thought, and they promote a work environment that values and maximizes the contributions of their employees. So for today's webinar, you're going to be hearing from two women from Moody's about some of those exciting opportunities that could potentially be the next step in your career journey. So you'll learn about some of the work that they're doing, about the opportunities that you have to work in their collaborative and supportive environment, and a little bit about some of the competitive pay and benefits, as well as career development programs that are offered. All right, so with that, I will be our host for today. My name is Courtney Barrett. I'm a branch strategy manager here at Fairygodboss. Our panelists today joining us for Moody's are Amy Scoggin, who is with Moody's Talent Acquisition, as well as Kat Tucker, who is our managing director and head of product for Moody's Investor Service. And I will pass it to each of you if you want to just say a few words, a little bit about yourself, where you're based, and then anything beyond that, your hobbies, your likes, dislikes, etc.
Kick us off, Kat.
All right, I'm Kat Tucker. I head up product management for Moody's. I'm from Philly, born and raised. Have a wonderful husband and two 8-year-old twin sons. I'm relatively new to Moody's, so this week is actually my 6-month anniversary. So prior to joining Moody's, my role did not exist, which I think is really exciting because it represents just the innovation and the move toward agility that Moody's is really investing in, and makes it a very exciting place to work. So I hope to talk to you guys a little bit more about some of our opportunities, but that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. So Amy Scoggin, as Courtney said, I'm with the talent acquisition team. My background has been in recruitment, both in financial services and executive retained work as well. Since joining Moody's about 2 years ago, I've been working with our team to support Moody's Investor Service, which is the ratings agency part of the business. But holistically, we like to think about how folks can sit into different parts of the organization, whether it's MIS or other parts. Just a bit about myself personally, I just got back from mat leave. So I'm a mom with 2 kids. My youngest just turned 6 months today. So I did the whole 2 a.m. sick kid thing last night. So if you see a yawn, I apologize in advance, but that's the reality I'm in, but very happy to be back at Moody's as a working mom. And during COVID, we did the whole move thing. So we also did apartment to house. So lots of life changes along the way, but excited to be here talking with you all today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, great. So to kick off our session today, let me go ahead and get my slides pulled up. We're going to walk through some of the things at Moody's that really make it just a wonderful environment for women to work in. So let's see here. Let me go into presenter view. All right, great. And I'm going to kick it over to Amy.
Great. So as Courtney shared, we're really excited to talk to you all about our tech hiring. And right now, Moody's is in an exciting place of transformation and growth. And also to coin a word that Kat used, agility is a word that we're using both from a big A context, from the tech standpoint, but also lowercase a, and what that means in terms of being more nimble and how we work in the business, whether or not you're in the tech vertical. And so it's a very exciting time at Moody's, and more specifically as we hire for tech talent. In terms of our value proposition in the market, I believe it was last year, we went through the exercise of developing all of this new language and branding that you see right now in terms of Moody's is looking to drive better decisions, full stop. This isn't just around financial decisions. This is because we are a data organization, and based on sitting on the wealth of data that we have, we either can provide services from the ratings agency context or within Moody's Analytics, where we curate, develop products, think about how our content is then delivered externally to our customers. And so we look to provide clarity and knowledge and fairness in the market as that ties to decision making. We want to make sure that our trusted insights, again, depending on what product vertical you come to engage with us for, are trusted for the fact that we are the people who are using our data to help you do the better decision making. So that's our high level purpose at Moody's. And then this is a really good example of what I was just talking about in terms of the different product offerings that we have. And so no matter where you sit at Moody's, this is some of the things that we focus on to drive that purpose and that mission. So whether it's the credit analysis, our assessments, the robust research we do. And I think what's so exciting when we talk to the research team is the thematic research they do. So how does COVID impact the overarching market and what's going on? And how do we then slice that down? And how does that impact the ratings and debt issuance and so forth? And so a lot of that work is very interesting and compelling. And what you'll see down here is the listing of our different entities. And all of them span all of this. And of course, tech spans all of that. So we're looking to hire tech professionals, whether you're in analytics, investor service, Moody's Local, for any of these different product offerings. Moody's by the numbers, I'm just going to call out two here, maybe three, but I think from a ratings agency perspective, what I found incredibly compelling, 39,000 rated entities and transactions. So if you think about the tech capabilities we need to be able to push that work forward is absolutely phenomenal. And so Kat and her team sit within the tech organization to help us think about how we can drive all of those products out to the customers. And so I think that's just a phenomenal number because we are one of the top credit rating agencies out in the market. The other one I want to point to that I think is just exciting and shows you how we're trying to be more forward thinking and nimble in terms of how we interact in the market is down at the bottom where we talk about 1 million in terms of our rating scores within the climate space. ESGC, and we added the C to talk about climate, is a business that we are growing right now because we want to be a player within that space. Not only is it relevant from a social perspective, but also customers want this. And so again, you know, there's a lot of different ways that talent can see themselves grow within Moody's. And one place I think that's really exciting that we like to talk about is our ESGC business as well. Culture at Moody's. So I like to talk about this slide. Again, this is for anyone who's familiar with Moody's. I think hopefully you'll notice that we talk about ourselves a little bit differently in the market right now. And that's very purposeful because we are undergoing a lot of growth and transformation. We have a new CEO as of January of this year. We really want to be holistic and think about this one MCO approach. And as we think about hiring professionals who not only bring the explicit content expertise, we want to hire folks who are really excited about working in this fast-paced, forward-thinking environment and who want to be agile. And so when we think about hiring, we want to make sure that we're partnering with you in terms of how you can help drive this value proposition and build your career within the organization. And so the things that I like to call out that I think are top of the line in terms of hiring right now is forward thinking. We're always looking for folks who are trying to be proactive. How are we problem solving? How are we thinking about going to the next level in 2.0? And the second one right here in terms of being collaborative, we are a hyper collaborative culture. And I think a lot of it comes down to the work that we do within the ratings agency, where it's a lot of evaluation and discussion, and why are we giving a country or a company a grade A or B rating, and the most junior person in the room speaks first, all the way up to the most senior. And so we like to hear everyone's opinions and perspective, and that plays out and is pervasive throughout the rest of the organization. Oh, we can go to the next slide. Those are the two I wanted to call out.
And I'll pick up here, Amy. So when it comes to diversity and inclusion, we're focused on 3 areas. So career, you'll see through our business resource groups that we're really invested in diversity in hiring and career mobility. We focus on inclusive leadership and talent so that you can see yourself represented across the firm and really feel good about bringing yourself to work. And then our community. So, in all of the areas where Moody's is located, just the activities and the employee engagement that we provide are really top priorities for the firm. You can go to the next slide. So our employee resource groups, it's funny, when I joined a couple months ago, so our resource groups have been recognized for diversity and, making our employee experience really amazing. When I first started, I guess this is my 6 months ago, there was something on my calendar that was like International Men's Day. And it was something that our new CEO was hosting. And I'm thinking to myself, as a new, female leader in the organization, I'm like, do they really need an International Men's Day? And so it piqued my curiosity, because I spent, 18 years of my career at Chase, and I was, familiar with all of the sessions and, the support behind women. So I joined just out of sheer curiosity to see what in the world they could be talking about. And I was so delighted to find that, one, it was led by our new CEO, Rob Fauber. He was talking about advocacy for women and men's role in taking ownership for that advocacy for women and propelling their careers forward and mentoring them and really, representing them in areas where they didn't represent themselves currently. And he told like a really personal story just about his relationship with his father and how that really just made him this, someone who was a firm advocate for women. And it really, kind of propelled him to make this a mission of his. And I was just really brought in within that first week of how our CEO, one, got that personal, and two, took it to men to say, hey, how do you support the women around you? So it let me know on day 1 or probably day 3, just how seriously Moody's took this. And it just gave me a good feeling and a good launching pad to kind of start out within that first week. So I'm involved in the multicultural BRG, and they, just the ideas that come forward on how we talk about many different cultures and how we represent those, and are very open and honest about the issues that we all face because of our differences and how we solve them. It's really inspiring to work in an organization that has such great BRGs. So you can go to the next slide. So this is just to show, like, we are recognized as a top employer. I will say that it's not just a concept or a plaque on a wall or a LinkedIn post. This is just very real and very felt when you work in this organization. So just when you see these things, just keep that in mind. Like this is really something, when you work here, you actually feel this. So it's an honor to have a company that really is represented this way. And I'll pass it back to you, Amy.
As I unmute myself, you hear the benefits. The next slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of benefits at Moody's, I think it's great to talk about what we offer in addition to just the basic compensation or salaried component. I think in terms of our packages, they're pretty competitive if you think across both the services sector, but also within the tech sector. My husband works at Google, and we're always like matching, like, okay, whose benefits are we going with this year? Because they're so neck and neck. And I know places like Google are always getting like, oh, it's the best, but it's really competitive at Moody's. Some of the things to call out that I think is relevant: flexible work arrangements is something that is, we are taking the learnings of how we've been very successful this past year working remote. What does that look like when we go back to the office? And we're in the process of rolling out what we're referring to as workplace of the future. It's going to look different for different teams, and the business unit leaders are really going to drive how that's going to be implemented, but there's going to be optionality in terms of that. And so I think that's one thing where we're being very conscious and proactive in how that can be something in our back pocket. And then the other pieces I think are pretty consistent, you know, such as educational assistance, commuter benefit, parental leave. These are some of the things that we offer as well. Great. So in terms of our open tech roles, as we're thinking about, you know, one MCO, we are actually undergoing a really comprehensive project right now to make sure we have consistent jobs, whether where it's all leveled consistently within Moody's Analytics and the ratings agency and our shared service function in terms of the tech talent that sits there. Because what we want to promote is that whether you join the organization and sit on Kat's team or the software engineering team within MIS, that should you want to move, you know, sideways, up, what have you, in other parts of the organization, that we have a language that we can use to provide that optionality and that career trajectory. And so that's one thing that we want to make sure that we're emphasizing as we're talking to talent in the market. In terms of what we're hiring for right now, I'm going to start and actually talk about some of our hot locations, because within MIS, Charlotte, North Carolina is where we are doing our volume hiring. And Tim Bott, the Chief Technology Officer, who joined us maybe about 3 years ago at this point, has put together a phenomenal vision in terms of building a tech hub and wanting to work in an agile way, going to have squads together where they're working in sprints. And so we really are excited to build a culture and a team that will be based out of Charlotte as we want to work in a more agile way. And so the jobs in that vertical are going to span the gamut in terms of data. And that could be data engineering, data modeling, the software engineering part as well. And then I know Kat also has, she sits in the product vertical as well. And then we also have folks we're hiring for in UI, UX, and more that creative side as well. And so those are some of the ones that I would call out. But Kat, anything else you would call out in terms of the Charlotte build?
No, I think you got it. I think it is exciting because it's a new direction for us, where we've opted to centrally locate our teams, because a lot of you've worked in a lot of other organizations like I did at Chase, where agility really does rely on everyone getting together, collaboration, conversation, and discussion. And so while we do have flexible work arrangements coming, it is something that it matters to be in the same place and collaborate in that way. And we're really investing in that. So I think you hit all the core functions though.
Great.
Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you so much for that. There was a lot of great information there. And for anyone who's interested in learning more about careers at Moody's, you can either visit their website directly, or you can also scan this QR code directly from your phone. So just pull up your camera and this will take you directly to the page. So I'll also share this out at the end of our call today. And from here, we're going to go ahead and get into our Q&A portion of the session here. Right. Great. All right, so would love to kick us off. Kat, I'll start with you. Would love to hear just a little bit about what your career path has looked like. I know you're somewhat new to the Moody's team, so we'd love to just hear a little bit about kind of your background and what ultimately drove you to join Moody's.
Yeah, so I started, graduated from Howard University a long time ago. I won't give the date on that one. But, initially I wanted to be a lawyer. I like to argue and discuss, and I found a use for that in my career now, thank goodness. But originally majored in poli-sci and business. And then I don't know if you guys are familiar with the program Inroads, but I was an Inroads intern and I interned at Aetna. And then really got into software development, just kind of fell into like, how do I solve problems and create systems for each of these departments that I rotated through. And so at that point, once I graduated from Howard, I worked for them and then went and got a degree, Master's of Science in Information Science from Penn State. So that was a very intense couple of years of just like working and learning and realizing, what I wanted. I knew I wanted to be close to technology. I knew I loved the creative, just the creativity in it. And so, but I, at the close of that, I didn't want to be a database developer or software engineer necessarily. I wanted to be close to it, but I wanted to take it, a level up. And so then I went and got my MBA from University of Maryland. So at that point, I had to convince everyone in my family that I was not going to be a perpetual student and would actually get a job one day. After that, I went and worked for a company, Bank One, which is ultimately merged with Chase. And that's really where, I started in business development, where my career, I would say, kind of began in banking and in the professional space. And while I spent 18 years at Chase, which was great, I rotated through so many, different functions and different lines of business across business development and relationship management, program and project management, innovation and transformation, through all lines of business with the consumer bank and business banking and mortgage and auto and card services and you name it. So it was the perfect breeding ground just to not only give me breadth of experience over businesses, but also just over functions. And all of, I would say that the one theme that carried me through my career was we were always in a state of change or driving that next, that next technology, that next channel. And when I started, I was actually in the corporate internet group, which is funny to say now, because it was the internet group because there weren't other channels. So we launched the first mobile app and things like that. So it's always been just fun for me to be on the cutting edge of what's next. How do we talk to our customers? How do we solve their problems? What can we do different and innovate? And so my last stint at Chase, I was in auto, leading their transformation for their digital platforms. And at that point, I kind of wanted to do something different. I'd gone around the company. I think I spent a lot of time, had a lot of relationships, but I had colleagues at Moody's, which reached out and said, "Hey, we're looking at standing up product management. What do you think?" And what was so exciting in this space is you very rarely get an opportunity to work for such a well-known, well-respected company that is not a Goliath. Like, Chase is a massive bank. It is, 300,000, 350,000 employees. So Moody's is a smaller company. So for me, it was working for a powerhouse of a company that was a lot smaller, that I could touch more across the company and really make a big impact by standing up product management, and just being a part of the driving force for agility and innovation. So just, the excitement of jumping back into something new with such an amazing company is what pulled me away from an 18-year career at Chase. And I have to say, it's been exciting since day one. It's been exhausting in a refreshing way because every day is new. We're coming up with new ideas. We're brainstorming together. And, at the end of the day, we spend way too much time at work not to have fun. And so I could say I'm having fun. And that is tremendously meaningful to me. So that's kind of where I am now. That's been my path to get here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And I think anytime, you've been with an organization for that long, it's such a difficult decision to leave, right? So sounds like for you, the timing was perfect. And so glad to hear that, coming up on your 6-month mark here, that so far is so good. And Kat, kind of a follow-up question to that. So along with, your past experience, as well as your education, what would you say are a few skills that you possess that believe have helped you the most in your career?
It's funny because it's evolved over the years, and I hate to be like all cliche, but there's this, I've said this before in a couple different forms, but I call it the FACTS, FACTS, right? And so when I think back on my career, I always think about like those moments where I didn't say something, or I should have spoken up, or like, what were the things that I got over or I got in my head that allowed me to move forward? And number one, all of them are fearless, authentic, conscientious, and trusting yourself. And so like fearless, it's like, be fearless in your pursuits. And you don't, when you're young and you come out of school, that's hard, right? Everything is scary. You don't know what you're doing necessarily. Everything's new, but what's the worst that can happen? You fail or someone says no, right? And those are not career ending. So if you can, in every moment, just remind yourself to be fearless and think about what's the worst that can happen. And it's usually not that bad. Be authentic. So I would say the trajectory of my career has been driven by authentic relationships and people I've worked with, that I develop friendships with. Networking is kind of a dirty word sometimes because I don't believe in forming relationships that aren't meaningful. And so being authentic is bring your authentic self, bring your skills to bear, help people. People may forget the project you worked on with them one day, but they won't forget how you made them feel or how fun it was to work with you. So just, be authentic in that way. Be conscientious in the sense, like, give the best at everything you do. Just be excellent. I mean, at the core of everything, if you're going to succeed, it's be good, period. Give your best. And then at the end of the day, just, trust yourself. Know that you're worth it. Know that you should be in this room when you're there, even if sometimes you're the only one. And I think as women, a lot of us have been the only one. You get out of your own head a lot of times and just know that you belong, and then do the rest. And so that's really, I've evolved on all of those fronts over the last, I won't tell you, I guess, more than 18, 20 years. But those are the things that if you can get those down and refine those over time for yourself, then I think, it's kind of my keys to success and why I'm comfortable in trying new things, failing, because I do. But I get enough of it right that I sleep good at night.
Right. Yeah. And I love the acronym IMPACT. It's just a great way to kind of stop and remind yourself of that, just as you're going about your work life. Wonderful. So I'd love to pivot to Amy. I know that you mentioned that you have recently become a mom of two. So I'd love to just hear a little bit about kind of how you find balance between your work at Moody's, along with your home and family life.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Moody's really strives to do is to have very open and transparent conversations. And so, and that's whether you're sitting in HR or you're sitting in the business, as we refer to it. I think one of the things that we really seek to do is to provide the support that people need as they're returning back to work. I've been very fortunate to have my boss be incredibly supportive and flat out says families first. So as I came back to work, and what was so funny is he called me when I was on leave because of when our comp comes out in terms of bonus payment. He was like, I want you to know what's happening. This is the only reason I'm calling you while you're on leave. And he called me. I had no pen and paper. I was just in a sweater, chilling with the baby. And he's like, really relaxed. I was like, I'm not ready for this conversation. I'm sorry. But he was like, no, families first. This is great. And so even in those moments of where you're having touch points, like it felt good coming back because that you're supported by your team. And so I think for us right now, because we are in growth mode at Moody's, it means a lot of work. And it means, if you want to do your best, sometimes that means more hours. And so how do you balance that with the fact that you want to be really good at home? And one of the things that I was happy to see when we got back is we now have these little things that go in our email signatures that says there is no need to respond outside of normal business hours. And that was just like a weight taken off.
Right.
Because now there's global managing directors who I partner with for hiring who don't expect for me to email them at 9, 10 o'clock at night. And nor should they. And so I think there's just little things that seem little, but really add up to being very big things that make it easier to go back to work and have conversations. And I think to Kat's point, and this is my last point, about being sometimes the only woman in the room, when I started working 15, 16 years ago, it's vastly different in terms of the amount of female leaders. And so I spoke with a hiring manager just the other week and I was like, yeah, I'm back from mat leave. And she goes, let me tell you my story, and gave me her entire trajectory in terms of what it was like to be a working mom. And that was just open space to talk and have a conversation and to know that I had an ally in the room. So lots of little pieces together that I think have threaded to be a meaningful experience.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I totally agree. I think sometimes it's the smallest things that can make the biggest impact. So love to hear that there is just that open dialogue at Moody's. And along the same lines, Amy, kind of, with you returning to work and getting back to your career, what have you learned, or what advice do you have for other moms who are maybe looking to return to work after having children?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's coming back from parental leave or coming back from a longer gap, I think it's just very clear in terms of expectation setting, both on the personal side and whatever the dynamic is in terms of that team of support personally, what that
Mhm.
is very clear expectation setting. And then I think also with the job as well, whether it's, look, I will log in early, but I need to be offline from 8 to 9 to do kid drop off. So don't get like, that's why my calendar is blocked. And so I think the only way that I've seen it work at any level in an organization is very clear expectation setting. And I know sometimes it's very hard to raise your hand and say, I have to do kid drop off, or I have to be available here, or I have a sick parent, or whatever the case may be. But I think the more that there's the communication, and I think it's also just prioritizing what needs to be prioritized and making sure that you're clear about what that looks like. So I think that's been the best thing that I've seen to help folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, with, the pandemic starting in last March, I think that, that line between work and balance, work and life has just been totally removed. So I think one of the positives that we have seen is that, people are more comfortable, setting those boundaries, making sure that they are allotting the time they need for whether that's childcare or, helping your aging parents or whatever that may look like. I think that is one of the positives that we've seen during this period. And along the lines of the pandemic, which I know everyone is probably sick of hearing about, Kat, I wanted to go back to you because I understand that you onboarded at Moody's during the pandemic. So we're working in a remote environment. Would love to just hear a little bit about how that experience was and how it's probably still going.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting to leave a firm where you spent like decades building relationships and knowledge and then start somewhere blank slate, brand new virtually. And I think what I found is, one, you have to take the time, you have to make the time to meet with people. You're not going to run into anyone in the hallway. There's not going to be a casual conversation about anything. Everything is deliberate on Zoom, right? It's on your calendar, it's a meeting, it's a dial in. And so it's setting up those deliberate conversations and then really, again, taking the time to get to know each other personally. And, the one thing is that it's the pandemic really does bring us all to the same level. And it's kind of positive in a way working remotely, because I've brought everyone into my house, whether I like it or not. There's while we're experiencing it differently, we're all experiencing the same thing. And so when my dog comes in the room, and I've got two back there right now, but when they come in the room, like, we talk about each other's dogs, like we really do bring each other in a personal way together that we haven't before. I've literally, on a call last week, shared my son's little his report on sloths with the call that I was on. He came in, he needed to talk about it. And so we all learned a little bit about sloths. But it's one of those ways that you think about using it to your benefit. In an office meeting people, it really is very professional, and you have to make a different effort to learn and get to know people personally. But I think what you do is I've used it to my benefit to say, hey, what's that behind you? Or say hi to your kids or whatever. You just have to take the pros and the cons. So it's been interesting. And I thought about it the other day, is I genuinely feel that I have these great personal relationships with colleagues, peers, and people across the firm that not only am I separated by because we're at home, but they are across the ocean. They are in other countries. And it almost levels the playing field in that way, where we have a closeness because we've had to learn to communicate this way. So it was new. It was really, difficult in the beginning, but I find now I have to remind myself I haven't met these people in person,
Right.
And because I feel like I have. So I think if you put the work in, like Amy and I have talked all the time. And so like, I feel like I know Amy, but even though we've never been in the same room.
Right.
So it's difficult, but I think you find those connections and find that, it does humanize us a whole lot more because we're collectively going through the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you referred to it as bringing people into your home. I hadn't really heard of anyone frame it that way, but it's such a good point. And I would agree. I think I've learned more about my colleagues' personal life in the past year than I really ever had, even seeing them every day. So I think that that's a great way to look at it, and love how you framed that. Great. So I want to pivot just a little bit and talk a little bit about, for each of you, kind of who's someone in your life who, whether it's one person or a group of folks, who have really inspired you in your career.
You may go first? Or you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So, I would, my answer is very stereotypical. It's my mom. So like when I think about, I've met a lot of women in my life that have been great leaders and inspirational and whether management or peers or, the one person who's always been the cheerleader in behind me that told me I can do everything. You can make this happen. When I had doubt, the one person that's always there and still is actually, like, she's just as proud of me today as for everything I do as the little picture maybe I handed her when I was in 6th grade. And there's something to be said for a person that, whether it happens to be my mom, but if there's something to be said for someone who's always in your corner, and someone as a woman that you look up to that has, fought incredible odds to do what they do and is always telling you that you can. So that's mine.
Awesome. And great timing coming off of Mother's Day weekend.
For sure.
Mom would be very proud.
We have to send your mom a link of this recording. So
Right.
Mom, watch this. And see.
Hi, Mom. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. I think I really pull from a lot of different people throughout my career, and been fortunate to work in different organizations and have exposure to different professionals. And I think that's the reason I've stayed in recruiting for so long, to be quite honest, is that I talk to different leaders across the business. And so I'm learning about different things all the time. And when I did executive search, it was zooming into different organizations, learning about them, what they do, externally for the market. And it's afforded me opportunities to have exposure to people. And early on in my career, a senior leader was mentoring me when I was at Lehman, and I had made a major mistake in front of the chief HR officer, and I'm just an associate starting out my career, right. Horrified. And one of the best things she told me is that, the mistake is only as big as you make it. If you continue to amplify this for him, then he's going to think it's a really big deal. But if you respond in a very calm way and say, look, this is how we're solutioning for this, this is how we're going to move forward, then he's going to think, okay, things are under control and we can push forward. And as I've pushed forward in my career, it's one of the things that I keep in my back pocket and take out whenever there are those fire drills or moments. And so that's one person and one piece of advice that I've taken with me for a very, very long time. And so there's little nuggets like that.
That nugget is everything, because it's true. Yeah. How many times, every time I stick my foot in my mouth, I say that to myself, even though I don't know that I am. But yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah. I know our president here at Fairygodboss, one of her favorite quotes is, and I won't get this just right, but it's something like, learn to view your failures not as mistakes, but as learning opportunities. So I know for me, and I think women in general, we tend to be hard on ourselves. We have a hard time forgiving ourselves. So I think that's wonderful, and definitely a great thing to always remind yourself. Great. So next question, and I'll open this up to either Kat or Amy. Would love to just hear a little bit about what sets Moody's apart when it comes to advancing women in the workplace. And a little bit more in particular, would love to hear a little bit about how women are moving into leadership. So any information around any of your development programs or leadership networks, and whichever one of you wants to speak to that.
Yeah, I'll start with the programs to give kind of the HR lens. And the answer is that we have quite a few. So I know when we spoke about our employee resource groups, one is the Women's ERG, which is really to amplify and grow the network and just opportunities internally for mentorship and support for women, which is more, I would say, of an informal grouping and pairing. We also have formal development programs. We have one at the senior executive level where at the SVP to MD level, we're working with women who are high potential to make sure that they're getting the coaching, the training they need. There's opportunities for project work as well. And it's really to give them the voice and the tools that they need to continue to grow and progress. And again, this speaks to the one MCO approach, because it's where we're going to move them in the organization, not just the ratings agency, not just Moody's Analytics, but how can we provide opportunities and cross-pollinate some of these really strong leaders across the organization. And we're starting another program at the mid-management level as well. And what's funny is that the senior one is called Tide and the mid-management one is called Surf. So we've definitely gone for a theme there. But those are some of the examples of things that we do. And the last one I'll speak to is Reignite, which is a re-entry program for people who have left the workforce for a number of years and are looking to re-enter the workforce. That's another program we have where we want to partner them with roles that we have. And it's a 6-month kind of returnship, so to speak, where they can try us out. We can provide them support and mentorship. At the end of 6 months, if it works out, then it could potentially move into a full-time role.
Awesome. Yeah. And I did see that there were a few questions around that in our chat today. So for those of you, as Amy mentioned, maybe took a career break or looking to return to work, definitely we would encourage you to look into that Reignite program. And then for Kat, anything else you wanted to share there, just as far as kind of how Moody's is advancing women?
Yeah, I mean, it's the measure for me, because I've survived in my career many efforts to promote women and elevate women and make sure there's opportunities. And technology is one of those spaces where women are always have been underrepresented in the past. Is what I do see here is that I'm surrounded by women. So I'm not the only one in the meeting. At very senior levels, at junior levels, across the firm, that's how I know that the rubber meets the road here, where the rubber meets the road with Moody's, and that we actually do that. I'll say, my boss, who you mentioned earlier, Tim Bott, who's the CTO, his personal mission is, elevating women in technology. He takes that very seriously. And I will say, total coincidence, but 3 new hires on my team, direct to me, have been women in the last 6 months. So best candidates, hands down the best candidates. But we are, you see it and you feel it, and it just tells me that Moody's is really about action. So again, being here 6 months, I'm still learning about the programs, but I can say I see that this has been a priority for a while, and it shows in our everyday work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially coming in new, obviously that's not something that happens overnight. So really clear that, they've been putting in the work for years and seen a lot of great outcomes. Wonderful. So my last question before we kind of pivot to our audience questions. So Kat, I know that you mentioned oftentimes you're speaking with folks in other countries all over the globe. Would love to just hear a little bit more about that and how you kind of feel that is kind of one of those benefits that comes with working at Moody's. That's not necessarily, a part of your benefits package, but you can just really, be a great part of the job.
Yeah, it was I knew that when I joined Moody's, the reputation of Moody's, which is, world-class credit rating agency. We cover everything. We're global. We are, our opinions are very well respected, and that reputation precedes it. One of the things that was super cool when I joined is I talk to someone in another country every day, every meeting. So it's just the diversity across, ethnicities and countries and perspectives. And I fall into conversations around, what's happening in Hong Kong, what's happening in the UK. Oh, you're in Brazil. What's going on down there? But it's really, it's like this enriching, cool benefit of being in a world-class organization. My previous firm was a global organization, but we were really very siloed. And most of who I talked to was probably around me or in a city or a state over. But what's very cool is just, it's so enriching to work across the world in that way and really talk about global issues and impact the world in a way that I just find personally very satisfying. And in a firm that, again, is relatively small from what I'm used to, but the impact is enormous. And so I've just found that to be one of the check boxes on fun of what I get to do every day.
Right. Very cool. Amy, did you have anything to add along those lines?
No, I mean, I think Kat covered it. I mean, even from our perspective in talent acquisition, I'm constantly partnering with my colleagues in EMEA, in APAC, and we support LATAM. So it's an organization where you really have exposure across the business. And in some ways it can feel very flat, which is exciting because we aren't hyper beholden to hierarchy. And so I think that actually gives a lot of opportunities and a lot of exposure as well. And I think the ERGs as well is
Mhm.
a way that I've seen a lot of people build their internal network. Because we are smaller, it's easier to say, oh, I worked on a special project in the multicultural ERG and I met someone based out of Hong Kong or whatever the case may be, or we drove this project. And so it makes the barriers to entry kind of diminish given the size of the organization, and give the opportunities in terms of who you have access to and how you can provide impact, whether it's like professional work or it's special projects that are motivating and fun, that I think are exciting.
Wonderful. Okay, great. So we've got some questions from the audience. So I'd love to take some time to get to a few of these. There's a couple questions around some of what we are hearing as like non-traditional candidates, right? So maybe they were, took a career break, they were graduates of boot camps, or maybe they partnered with certificate programs. The question is, how does Moody's look at these candidates and can they be considered?
Yes, is the very quick, short answer. I would say that for people who have taken breaks, there's the program Reignite that we just spoke to. That is definitely a more formal program. So if you're looking for more mentorship and support, that's there. I would say for other roles we're recruiting for, it's definitely an opportunity in terms of those who do have those years gap of experience. I think the thing, as whenever we've talked at career events or the Reignite program, that a lot of people are asking us, well, what are you looking for? People have had those gaps. It's, well, what have you done in that time frame to either take courses, volunteer, because there's very real skills that can be learned outside of a professional job context. And how are you demonstrating that? And how are you still demonstrating growth within those years? And so, and I think to Kat's point earlier, in terms of trusting yourself, it's like really trusting yourself. Like, I took this course on X, and so therefore I have been able to know what the cutting edge technology is and why. And so those are the things that I think just be prepared to talk about if we were to have more formal conversations about roles that we have.
Fabulous. Okay. Great. We have another question from our audience that says, hi, my impression is that Moody's has a lot of experience hiring, however, not as much new grad hiring. Please correct me if I'm wrong. What is Moody's expectation for new grad students?
Well, so in terms of grad as an undergrad, we have a campus program both in the US and EMEA. And it is a program that's probably, if you go to campus, much more built out when it comes to hiring in Moody's Analytics for their content and product development group, and in the ratings agency for our analyst pipeline. So the folks who learn how we do our ratings activity. This is the first year we're piloting hiring grads within MIS technology. So we have just under 10 that we're hiring. We're partnering with universities such as UNC Charlotte in terms of local universities, because it's a Charlotte hub that we're building. So we do have a campus program. I would say from a tech perspective, it's something that we're building and growing.
Okay, great. And then there's another question in the chat that asks a little bit about kind of what your current employee retention rate is, which I don't know that you're able to share that, but they also ask kind of what a promotional path at Moody's could look like, whether that's, manager to director, director to VP. And then the follow-up question there was, are promotions frequent?
Yeah. So I'll start with retention rate really quickly. I don't have a direct number to quote, but what I will say, and Kat, I'm curious to get your perspective here as well, is that there's this very interesting dynamic at Moody's right now where we have people who have been here for decades. And so there's this reality that people come and stay because they like it. If you're intellectually curious and you want to think and answer and solve big challenges, this is a place where you will excel and people come and stay. And it's being balanced out by the fact that we're undergoing a lot of growth and transformation. And so we're hiring subject matter experts in areas that maybe we don't have it internally. I think Kat's a phenomenal example of that in terms of the product development piece and how she's helping to just build that for us within the ratings agency. She has a huge job. I think right now the story at Moody's is that it's really this interesting blend of both. And as we're hiring talent, we want to make sure that we're merging the two together, because we want leaders who will come and keep the secret sauce of why people love Moody's here, but we also want transformational leaders who can continue to take us to the next level. And so it's this kind of blending of the new and old, because we want both to coexist together. So that's the one thing I'll say about retention. In terms of promotional path, we're shifting the dynamic in terms of what promotion means. And so promotion could happen because we post a role, you're interested in it, and if you were to get this role, it would be a promotion. And so that's just up to you. And like, I'm really excited to take on a chief of staff role for the president. That's one that we just placed that had a lot of people interested in it. Or it is you are doing so much more work and you've elevated your role in seat that you are receiving an in-seat promotion. That's the two ways that we're thinking about promotion right now. And the in-seat promotion can happen at any time. It's just a matter of going through that process and the approvals. And so I would say that that doesn't happen at a particular time of year. It's just when it warrants that it's appropriate. So it's definitely something that we're very conscious of career mobility and trajectory, whether that's from an associate analyst to an analyst, which I know that titling is incredibly clunky, but it's the way we have it right now. Or it's a software engineer to a senior software engineer, or an AVP software engineer. We have trajectory and growth that people can grow into, depending on functionally what vertical you want to be in.
Yeah. And I will say, I'll add on to that, that wasn't another interesting dynamic when I joined, is just how many people came to Moody's and stayed at Moody's and really love this organization and have built their careers here. And it is a really good mix of the historical knowledge, how we work, what we do, which coming into this organization, it is different. The business model is different than anything you've ever worked in. So it's almost an education of those of us coming in new with this new skill set, but it is a good, and Amy, you put it perfectly, a good marrying of Moody's and what Moody's is, and that rich knowledge and that rich employee base, and marrying that with new skills as we try to change the organization. When it comes to promotions, I'll just echo that. I think when you think about promotions, you got to think about a couple different things. Is what's your priority, right? There's moving up in your role, and those, Amy, those examples you gave of moving up as from a junior software engineer to a more senior software engineer, and those are, another thing I love about this company is it's not once a year, and if you miss it, it's gone. It's one of those things that it really is about you, and it's really about the skills that you bring and your contributions. The other thing is you got to think about what's your trajectory. So I had this conversation the other day with someone in the product management space, and product managers typically don't have large organizations. I happen to, because I am heading up the group, but product managers can own enormous products that have critical impacts to the bottom line, to customers, and are don't have a large hierarchy, but have a high level of importance and a high level of visibility. So what elevated means to you? Do you want a large team? Do you want large scope of responsibility? Sometimes those things go hand in hand, sometimes they don't. So I will say in this organization, I think that there's different kinds of promotion. There's title, there's breadth of responsibility, and it's going to vary based on what you own, but all of those options are kind of here for you to figure out what your career path looks like.
Fabulous. Okay, great. So as we're coming up on time, I do want to just reshare our slide here that's got the information for how to learn more about Moody's. So we'll give everyone a few minutes if they want to scan here. And then there was a few more questions in the chat. Sounds like a lot of interest from our audience today, just in the way of tech roles at Moody's. And there was a few questions just based on location. So I know that you mentioned your Charlotte hub is going to be a major focus as you're looking to hire roles there. There were a few questions about, are there remote opportunities, or what does it look like if you are maybe, I think the example was 100 miles or so from a tech hub? Would that be a disqualifier, or are you all currently open to remote employees?
It depends on where in the organization. So I would say for MIS technology, because we are looking to build a very strong culture, and also implement the agile way of working with squads. And you try something out, it doesn't work, you throw it out, you try something else. Working together collaboratively together is going to be really critical. And that's why we're very committed to bringing on board talent in Charlotte who can go to the office fairly regularly. For other groups within Moody's, it depends on the business needs. And so, are there opportunities within tech where we're open to remote folks? Yes. I would say that, that would probably sit within our central IT team and potentially within Moody's Analytics. And so, happy to talk to folks about any of those different, interest levels in terms of where you want to sit. I think there's also just a lot of great opportunity if you're interested in Charlotte, want to move to Charlotte, live close by. I mean, this is a phenomenal team. You get to work with folks like Kat every day. Honestly, I mean, we do
have fun. Yeah.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, I talk to folks in MIS technology who are obsessed with superheroes, and every day it's a new background of superheroes, and it helps me in my relationship with my 3-year-old because I get a lesson every day on Thor or whoever it may be. And so it's just a good group. And so if that's something where you are motivated by working with a group who's building something and Charlotte's doable for you, I can't reiterate how phenomenal that team is enough. So
awesome. Wonderful. Great. And then the last question, and I think from there we'll probably need to wrap. Someone asked, has Moody's partnered with any certificate programs like Google Data Analytics certificate program to help attract non-traditional talent to the workforce?
Not yet is the answer. It's something we're talking about, and and especially if you think about different entry points in terms of becoming a tech professional, certificate programs is one way that a lot of people do it. And so it's a conversation that we're having, is that an area where we want to focus. We do host hacker rank programs through Moody's Analytics. So for people who want to participate in events like that and get to know some of the different areas in which, we engage with folks externally, that's one thing to look into, but not at this time do we have any close partnerships with certification programs.
Okay, great. All right, well, we are at 12:59, so wanted to definitely end today with just a huge thank you to Moody's for sponsoring and to Amy and Kat for joining us. I think a lot of amazing information was shared today. A lot of engagement from our audience. So thank you all so much for being a part of this session. As I mentioned at the beginning, we did record this, so we will be sending it out as a follow-up in case there's anything you want to look back at. Otherwise, we certainly encourage you all to go to careers.moodys.com. You can also find Moody's on Fairygodboss, and we hope to hear from everyone soon. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and thanks again, Amy and Kat.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.